Hello, and welcome to the Rossaround Backstage Podcast, talking with artists, technicians, musicians, producers, directors, and all the interesting and talented people that make it all happen for you. Hi, everybody. This is Ross Pallone with the Rossaround Backstage Podcast. I am here today at my home studio with my good friend Michael Stever, and he is a trumpeter, an arranger, and a professor. And we're going to talk to Michael about his story, about how he started in the music business. So let's find out. Michael, how did you get into this business?
Hey, Ross. Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. I got started, well, at the very beginning, like everybody, I had piano lessons, and the piano part didn't really stick. The actual physical piano part didn't really stick, but the music part of it interested me. You know, it was like the whole thing. I had to have my mom set the kitchen timer for my practice time, and I had to fill that practice time with the finger exercises, all the Hanon and all that stuff.
Right.
And that part didn't interest me, like the nuts and bolts of it. But the music part was always the thing that I was interested in. So, along came fourth grade, where we picked instruments. And my mom had played flute and oboe, and my dad had played trombone and some organ as well. And I knew it wasn't organ that I was going to play, or piano. So I wanted something kind of similar, but I didn't want to do the exact same thing and play trombone. So I just picked trumpet, kind of arbitrarily. But it just made sense at the time. And so the only rules were no saxophone and no drums. Those were my rules.
No, those were your rules or your parents' rules?
Those were my parents' rules.
Oh.
Yeah, those are loud and they sound terrible when you start.
Well, trumpets aren't exactly soft.
Yes, exactly. So that might be part of why I usually play softer than other people. So it was just no sax and no drums. Those were the two rules. So I had, the others to choose from, and we didn't have a string program in our district. So it was basically just the band instruments, and I didn't want to do other woodwinds, and trumpet just made sense. So I picked trumpet and got a student trumpet, and proceeded to make awful cacophonous noises for a while, and started to get a hang of it to the point where my parents realized that I should start having private lessons. So I started taking with a guy, Maynard Cressman, in Pennsylvania, and he was my first private teacher, and he really kind of instilled the basics, just tone production over everything else. Like the tone is the number one thing, time, pitch. It's just all the basics, and he introduced me to Doc Severinsen, just a couple recordings of those guys. And so it kind of like piqued my interest in what the trumpet does, more from a frontman perspective, which was kind of interesting to listen to, but also like the what he taught me was how to play in a section and blend and all of that stuff. So all the important things.
Yeah, because most of the time you are playing in a section.
Yeah,
rather than soloing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so you can do what you want with you can be a frontman if you want. And it was just like my predilection was more toward the sideman thing. Like, I guess I didn't know it at the time. I didn't even know what a sideman was. But
right, of course.
Yeah. But it was just kind of like everything in school. You play as an ensemble and you blend. And I always liked listening to those the artists and the Maynards and guys like that. But he really taught me the basics of that. And so that part, like I said, I mentioned that I didn't like the nuts and bolts of practicing piano, but all the trumpet stuff was interesting to me. Like just what the valve combinations were and how everything worked. And so that progressed. And I think it was when I was in middle school, I switched teachers to a guy who was he was a touring musician. He was a sideman himself, and like he was kind of in the trenches and doing the thing, you know. His name was Bob Livingood, and he had played a lot with Liza Minnelli. He had played with Billy Joel, like, you know, just the working musician type thing.
Yeah, he'd been around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So he actually lived pretty far away, and I was lucky that he actually taught in my hometown. So it was kind of fortuitous for me to have that resource so close. And so he really got me going with all of the aspects of the trumpet, from the high register to, you know, the articulation, cleanliness. Just I never really studied symphonic music. Like, again, we didn't have strings in my district, so it was all just band music. I never got to play, you know, Shostakovich, Rachmaninoff, and Mahler, and, you know, as much as I would have loved to, but it just wasn't what was presented to me in the district. So it was more, you know, Bob covered like all like basically the commercial trumpet nuts and bolts, and so that was what really interested me. Everything from how to play lead more, not effortlessly, but with less effort, more efficiently, I should say. How to improvise, you know, all those things came together, and just how to be as versatile as possible in any situation. And I'm very, very thankful for that. Like both Maynard Cressman and Bob Livingood really set the groundwork very well for that. I'm very glad that I had that kind of diverse training, just because with the business the way it is, like, you have to be, like, on one hand, Christmas time, do a Rudder Gloria or this or that, a C trumpet and piccolo trumpet, and then turn around and do a big band thing on trumpet and flugelhorn, or, you know, just whatever kind of.
Got to be versatile up to stay employed, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, commercially viable, and so that was my private education.
Is that up through high school?
That was through high school. I think maybe early into early college. I forget when exactly I stopped with Bob. Yeah, and then in school, the thing that got me really interested in commercial music and jazz was in middle school. My band director, Dave Kenny, he had a good kind of jazz sense, and he was a great piano player and sax player, and so he would always demonstrate certain things, like harmonically on the piano. Here's why this works. He'd play the line with the right hand and show where it fit in with the left hand. And then also, you know, he was really good on the sax as well. So showing us lines, like how to breathe within the lines. A lot of pianists, not a lot, but some pianists don't really breathe in their lines. Pianists and guitar players, some don't breathe, and so it kind of creates an anxiety as a listener. It's because they keep it's an onslaught of notes, and, you know, when you're phrasing something as a wind player or as a vocalist, you obviously have to have breaths in there.
Right.
So otherwise it's just a constant note, and there's no breath. So it's just kind of, it's hard to listen to. But so all of my teachers were kind of helping me along with that, with phrasing and you know, making my solos, you know, have a point, like have an arc to them, and, you know, just when to shut up and stop playing.
Right.
You know, use of space and everything. And that's another thing that a lot of young musicians, they end up playing too much too quickly. Like, they start their solo and it's just running notes all the time. Whereas, you know, you take a step back and just create an idea and let that bloom into something else.
Right, let it build a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a song does.
Yeah. You know, like telling a story. You know, you don't just talk at somebody for an extended period of time really quickly.
Yeah.
So it turns off the other person. So
right.
That was he was my middle school director, and then through high school I studied with Bob.
In high school, they also didn't have the string section.
Correct. Yeah, the entire program, there were no strings. I think they might be talking about doing it now, but I'm not really sure. It would have been a very useful thing to have, just you know, to have that other kind of playing under my belt, but I hadn't had that. But going forward, while I was in high school, I started doing the different music festivals and things, like the district and regional bands and orchestras, and that was an interesting thing. Like I said, I didn't have any orchestral experience, so we had district orchestra. When you tried out for district band, the first few chairs of each section go and play in district orchestra. So I got to district orchestra. When you get to the first day, you have to re-audition. You have to play something and re-audition for the regional level, and then after that is state. So I get in there, and I hadn't seen any kind of orchestral, trumpet part or anything. So I'm looking at it's a sight reading portion, and so it says in C, and I'm looking at the key signature, and it's in F. I'm like, it's not in C. I don't know what it's saying, but I'm reading it as it goes, and the adjudicator stops me. He's like, "Do you want to do the transpositions?" I'm like, "What transpositions?" Like it says in C, but it's obviously not in C. It's F. There's a B flat in the key signature. He's like, "Oh no, that's the transposition." So that was something that I didn't know, and had to kind of fall back into after the fact, was all these transpositions within the orchestral parts. And the only transposition I had done was, reading hymns, and, they're all in concert key, so I would have to read them up a step. So I was comfortable with that, but not, down a step or up a fourth or down a third, whatever it is. So
I don't read music like that. So tell me and the other people that don't understand. So that means that the notes are not correct, and you have to look at a B, but actually play an F or something, or a G or whatever.
Yeah, it's whatever. The thing might be written in the key of C with no accidentals or anything, but it'll say in F, so you have to transpose it. Or if there's a trumpet part that's written in B flat, this is how everything currently is written in commercial sessions like film and television. Everything's written for B flat trumpet. But guys use whatever trumpet is most suitable for them. A lot of guys use C trumpet or E flat trumpet, so they do the transpositions themselves. So they're used to doing that for many, many years, and so that's something that I've had to get used to. Playing a B flat part on the C trumpet, reading it down a step versus reading it as it is or reading it up a step. So it's
that sounds like really hard. To me, that just sounds impossible.
Yeah, and that's why it would have been nice to have had that training early on, so it was kind of second nature.
Yeah.
But I was kind of steered more into the commercial direction than the symphonic or orchestral direction, and it's also what appealed to me more. I always enjoyed listening to good symphonic music, but just the commercial and jazz thing is kind of where my interest is anyway. So I started doing these festivals and things.
But wait a minute. First, before we go on to that, tell me about what happened with the audition now, because they asked you to transpose it.
I just basically I don't know
was
how
that
to do
disaster?
That. I wasn't. Yeah, it was fine. I mean, like it. I went on to the regional level in the band, and I figured it out. I took it to my teacher and was like, "What do I do here?" And he told me that how to deal with that. But in the moment, it was just kind of not crash and burn, but I just didn't know how to do it and how to approach it. So I just read it as is. Like, I don't know these transpositions. I'm just going to read this as is. I'm sorry. So, like, I'll learn. I'll learn whatever
first chair then.
No, well, no, not for the next one. But that was something that I had to add to my pile of things to do. But on the other side of it, on the jazz side, there was a university in Philadelphia, University of the Arts. And they had a summer program for high school students that was basically, it kind of gave them the schedule of what it would be like in college if you went to college for music. And by that point, I was pretty sure that I was going to school for music. And so I was investigating that as an option. So you got to meet all the faculty, kind of see, you'd have an improvisation class. You'd have there was a big band, there was a small group, there was a theory and things like that. So it was kind of like a crash course in what college would be like, and I really, really enjoyed that. There were some critics of the program that said it was just a come on, and it was kind of a waste of time, and it would take me away from my school studies. But it was in the summer, and it didn't matter. And it was a great experience. I'm glad I did it. It really set up everything for the rest of my career, and that was a lot of fun. I met all of the faculty there, and it was kind of like an instant click kind of thing with those guys and with that school. So when it came time to pick a college, that was at the top of my list, and I did audition and got some scholarship money for it, and then I was able to go there. The main reasons that I wanted to go there.
This college was again
the University of the Arts in Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia,
yeah.
Okay.
It was close by, so I was about an hour northwest of there, but so it was close, but it was a really good school. I really liked all the faculty. The main reasons I wanted to study with this trumpet player, John Swana. He's a really, really fantastic jazz player, and very well known along the East Coast. Just really phenomenal player, great tone, great ideas, great harmonic knowledge and concept. And he was someone I really wanted to kind of pick his brain and learn from. And as well as Rick Kerber was one of the faculty who did the summer program. He was also a trumpet player and more in the commercial sideman kind of thing. And so I was going to study with him at first, and then with Swana later. But sadly, Rick he had cancer, and he got real sick before my freshman year, and he wasn't able to teach that semester, and he ended up passing away that year. Oh. So that was a major drag for everybody who knew him, because he was just like the kindest guy you'd ever meet. It was interesting that his favorite song was "Here's That Rainy Day." It's a jazz standard, really beautiful song. So it came to the day of his funeral, and there was a bunch of days before and after. It was just really nice weather, but that day it poured. It was just pouring rain. So here's that rainy day. All right. It was kind of a cool thing that came out of a crappy circumstance. But when I got to school, I studied with Dennis Wasco, who was also a commercial player in town. He did a lot of the shows and just various things. Like one of the things that you do when you're a commercial player in that area is you do a lot of shows and things down at Atlantic City, New Jersey. Like guys just go down there and do things there. So he was one of those guys that did a lot of work in town, and so he really got my fundamentals going. The young, fresh into college me was, I want to learn all these, I want to learn jazz. I want to play all this hip stuff, and like, okay, well, first we need to do the fundamentals. We need to get the trumpet stuff together. And so I was glad they did, because it was just even furthering what Maynard and Bob had taught me, just kind of focusing it further. The third year, I switched to John Swana and really, really enjoyed my time studying with him, just really getting into the nitty-gritty of the tunes and like how to get through them improvisationally, and playing horizontally versus vertically. We were talking about making phrases and everything like that, right, versus playing just every chord change that came along. That was a really great experience. My whole time at UArts was great. The big band was phenomenal. All my combos that I was in were really great. It was a very kind of exploratory kind of thing. The combo that I was in, we did some Mahavishnu thing. It was I think it was like in 1908. The time signature. They kind of stretched our young minds.
Really, wow.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a really great experience. And so when I graduated, I was working in town.
In
yes.
Philadelphia?
Yeah, in Philadelphia and around there. While I was still in school, I auditioned for a couple of different things that I had heard about. The first one being the Disney All-American College Band. And it was just, you submit a tape and certain list of repertoire, and the best tapes were invited to. There was a live audition, and then they kind of whittled it down from there. And then there were 2 bands previous. The year before I was there was a band in Disneyland and there was a band in Disney World. And when they called me to tell me that I got in, they said, "You're doing the band in Disneyland." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool." I heard there was another band at Disney World. And I said, "Oh, not this year. It got cut."
Oh,
so
no.
that was the first year that there was only one band.
Mm-hmm.
But that band was very, very formative for me.
That was in California.
That was in Disneyland. Yeah, we stayed down in somewhere in Anaheim. We got bussed in, and we had workshops with some of the top working guys in town, like Wayne Bergeron, Rick Baptist, Greg Field, a bunch of guys, Sal Lozano, and a lot of those guys I still work with, to this day. And so that was kind of my that was my introduction to these guys. And then now to be in sections with them and have them helping me out, it's really great. The other thing I forgot to mention, in high school, the first time that I was able to come out here, there was a Grammy band. There's a regional Grammy band and there was a national Grammy band, and there was a big band, there was a combo, and there was a vocal group, and so that was all audition based. So with the Grammy band, the regional one was directed by Rick Kerber, the guy who I was planning on studying with at University of the Arts. So I had known him from that, and I was in his group, the Northeast Regional Grammy Band, and he told me about the national one. And he said, "You better get your act together because the tape is due on Friday," and this was Tuesday. Yeah. So, and I was still in high school, so I had to go to class. The next day, my mom went down to Philadelphia and picked up the music. This is before the internet really took off and you could order stuff quickly. So she went to pick up the music and brought it back home. I worked on it that night. The next day I called in sick from school, went to my teacher's studio, Bob's studio, and he spent all day with me, just getting the tape together, getting a couple different takes. It was a video audition, so in addition to the audio, which he recorded on, I think, mini disc. Actually, was it mini disc then?
Yeah, could have been.
Yeah, which is great format. But anyway, he recorded the audio with a good mic, so we could have an actual good audio, because video recorders they suck. Audio is terrible. So, but then he also had the video camera. So then he took his time and synced everything up, and he recorded the VHS tape, put it in the mail for me, and sent it off. And it had to be postmarked by that Friday, like I said. And so, fast forward, I don't know, a week or two, I get a message at home from David Sears of the Grammy Foundation, or the Naris Foundation. And he said, "Hey, Michael, we got your tape. Give me a call." I was like, "Okay." So I called him, and he's like, "Yeah, we got your tape. It looks like you know what you're doing, but there's no audio."
Oh, no.
Yeah. So so somehow, I don't know, that the audio track demagnetized or something. I don't know what happened. And my heart sank, because this was senior year. This was my last chance. So I called Bob in a panic, and I was like, "Look, they got the tape, but it's only video. There's no audio." I thought that there was going to be no way. I said, can I, since I submitted this on time, can I submit the very same tape with the audio track? Is that acceptable? He said, "Yeah, that's fine. Just send it to us as soon as you can." So Bob had to go back in and do the whole thing again, and send the tape off again. And that time it actually worked. And Rick Kerber called me at home when we were eating dinner, and he said, "Hey, pack your bags. You made it. You're going to California." So that was in. We stayed in Santa Monica, right off of the 3rd Street. There was a double tree that we stayed in. The whole band stayed there, and that was just kind of my introduction to California, and how cool it was, and
So this is in high school.
This
right?
was high school, yeah.
So this was during the summer that you went there?
This was actually I think it was in January or February. It was early in the year.
So how did that work with the schoolwork?
I missed a lot of school that year. My principal was very cool. He was a fan of music, and he knew that that's what I was going to be doing. So, I kind of got a pass for that. So,
oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So that's how that worked.
All right.
And that was my introduction to LA, and we had guest artists there too, and we got to record. I forget where we recorded, but we recorded a CD, and we played a lot of live concerts around the area, and we actually went to the Grammy Awards that year, and that was kind of the biggest experience that I had at the time. And so, fast forwarding to back to in college doing the Disney band again. That was in Anaheim. So out here again, meeting all those really awesome guest artists. I think Andy Martin and Alex Isles were also they're trombone players in town. They were also clinicians, and not knowing it at the time that these guys would just be as cool. Now, a lot of people kind of look down on younger students like they're under them or something. But all of these guys, all of those clinicians, they kind of treated us as peers, and so it was just like an instant kind of familiarity with them. So we kept in touch with them. It was via email and everything. And there's another thing called the Henry Mancini Institute that I had heard about, and it's a thing held every summer. It's not in existence anymore, but at the time it was held every summer on the campus of UCLA, and it was another thing where there were guest artists, and they would come in, and it was like an entire day in the life of a LA commercial studio musician, because there was a film orchestra rehearsal during in the morning, and then there was an improvisation class just based on your improvisation level. There were small group combos, and there was a big band. So just kind of basically everything that you would be doing. It was just an introduction to that, and we'd have we went into the studio. I think it was Warner Brothers. We went in and we did a mock film scoring session. Where John Williams' brother, he had us play. He had the parts, the original parts for Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, the motorcycle chase. So they had it playing on the projector behind us, and we had these original parts in front of us. And so, okay, you got 8 clicks free, and then we start. So it was just like boom, like kind of just
sight
dropped
reading.
Into the middle. Yeah, sight reading, just dropped into the middle of. This is what a film session is. Yeah. So just read the parts, and it was just kind of an eye-opening experience. Like, it was so much fun, and in the same day we would rehearse the big band with a guest artist, or someone would come in and work with the orchestra. It was just a really great experience. Pat Williams was the orchestra director of that when I went there. When I did it, I did it for 2 years, 2003 and 2004.
This was like a week long.
It was a month long.
It
was a month long, yeah. And every week we had different repertoire. As we had a concert, I think it was every Friday, maybe, or every Saturday. I forget the exact schedule, but we would do a film concert. The scores of we did Avalon. Some older movies, and then we did Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon was a recent film, and so Monica Mancini came in and sang one of the things from there. We played it with the video above us, and so that was kind of an introduction to that. It was just a really diverse playing, like all packed into one, and that's where the trumpet teacher there was Charlie Davis, who he really got a lot of us started in LA. Like he taught us there's a famous brass instructor, William Adam, and he was in Indiana, and Charlie was a student of his, And so his teaching method was just very, very efficient and focused. And he would actually change it for every individual student. But he's not around anymore, so people have kind of just not diluted, but like kind of focused his approach down to kind of fundamentals, so that it's kind of broad for anybody to follow. So Charlie introduced us to some of the Bill Adams stuff, and we had lessons. I think it was at 7 a.m. before rehearsal. Oh, wow. And Charlie, he did a lot of TV shows and films, and he was on Family Guy, and he worked with Buddy Rich's band. He played lead with Buddy, as well as many other things. He was he's a very powerful player, and so we'd go in there at 7 a.m. try and keep up with him on these exercises, like this full sound. And I hear him like just blowing all this air, and I'm thinking that I'm going to be dead by the end of the. I have this. You have this lesson where I'm blowing my brains out here, and then we got orchestra, we got big band, we got combo and improv classes. I'm not going to have anything left. Like I'm going to be dead by 10 o'clock. But those are the days that I felt best. It's funny because it's just it gets your lips going, and so that's what he kind of ingrained in a lot of us. And then after that, I had mentioned that Monica Mancini was one of the guests at the Mancini Institute. Her husband is Greg Field, who's a drummer who I had already known from the Disney College Band. It's like the pieces are starting to come together.
Right.
So Greg calls me because he had heard me play at both the Disney Band and the Mancini Institute, and so Monica was going out for a tour, and he wanted to put together a band, and he wanted me in it. So we came out to LA, and we started rehearsal. Shelley Berg was a pianist and educator, fantastic at both things. Just a really good, genuine person in general. He had done some of the charts, and he was helping us with the rehearsals. He approached me after a couple of these rehearsals, and he said, "Have you been thinking about grad school?" I said, "Well, yeah, I had started to mull it over, and I was considering Manhattan School of Music and whatever else. I hadn't really been, too set on it at that point." But he said, "So what about? Do you know anything about USC?" So he was the head of the program there. I said, "I don't. I'm sorry. I don't know anything about the program or anything." He said, "Well, we have a really great faculty. We're right in the heart of LA. I think you'd be a good fit for it. There's a TA position available, teaching assistant position available. Obviously you have to audition and everything, and but if you get the TA position, then the school is paid for. You do some co-teaching in return for like the hours that you put in. You get a stipend. So basically, it was kind of like a 2-year ticket into LA, not having to worry about bills."
Nice.
So I auditioned, and I got that position in the jazz studies program, and so that was just a really great way for me to kind of like a safety net for moving into town. Like I didn't want to move anywhere just kind of cold and just out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But this was a really good way to get into it, and so I actually I co-taught with Alan Pasqua, who was also one of the instructors in the Mancini Institute. That's where I met him. He did the advanced improvisation class. So I had known him from that. Pieces continue to come together. So now I'm at USC with him, dealing with his freshman improvisation and jazz styles and analysis classes. Just learning how to teach larger classes of kids and how to effectively communicate improvisation to different instrumentalists and people of who have different styles and everything. And whenever Alan he would play with Alan Holdsworth and just a bunch of different things. He would be out from time to time, and when he was out of the country, I would teach the class, and so I got experience teaching from that. I had a couple private students, non-majors, as part of my hours for the TA position. But it was just really cool having all of these guest artists come in. With the big band, we had, Nancy Wilson, Dave Brubeck came in and did a concert with us. It was very cool. Steve Miller Band came in and did a concert with the big band. The whole all the students rearranged songs of his in a big band style. And it was just very interesting to see people's different interpretations of, how to make his music work in a big band setting. And so that it was just very, very beneficial to learn how to arrange in those different styles and play with those artists and everything.
So when Steve Miller came in, did he just play guitar with you guys?
He played guitar and sang.
Yeah.
I did a chart on Nature Boy, which is a jazz standard, and then also one of his tunes. I forget which one of his tunes, but like we did Fly Like an Eagle and Take the Money and Run, all of those.
It was hits.
People, different people did arrangements for it, and we did go into Capitol and record it, but I don't think it ever got mixed, and I don't think it ever saw the light of day. It would be interesting to hear that.
Yeah.
But it was just great to be able to play with all those different people, and I graduated from USC and just started.
Was that a master's degree?
Yeah, master's degree. Yeah, master's in jazz studies. Just started kind of trying to pay my dues and doing all the rehearsal bands in town and getting to know people and starting to do some casuals like wedding gigs and things like that, and as well as doing any kind of horn arranging that I can, because that's one of my favorite things to do and listen to is horn arranging, like the Tower of Power stuff. Greg Adams did a lot of that arranging, and Jerry Hay for the Seawind horns and like everything. Like he's arranged everything.
Yep.
Those two guys are my arranging heroes. So just kind of studying what they had done and trying to do some horn arranging on my own. And I got in touch with piano player and trombone player Brian Culbertson, who I had been listening to, and his stuff kind of stuck out just from the production, and he always had horns in it. So I got together with him and kind of picked his brain. How do you do this? How do you do that? And he showed me how he makes tracks from the beginning, and then adds the horns later, whatever. He just showed me his whole routine. I kept in touch with him, and his dad actually played trumpet with him when I had met him, and his dad was also a very busy educator in Illinois. A couple times when school was really busy for him, he couldn't come out and do some of Brian's shows. So Brian called me and asked me to play his show. And so he sent me the live mixes, which were considerably different than the studio mixes, the CD mixes. And so I learned those, and everything was memorized. I showed up and hoped that I had memorized everything correctly, and it went really well. First couple gigs, and then after that, he invited me on I think it was his first Christmas tour. And he asked me, he was like, there's a couple things that he doesn't like to use tracks. Mm-hmm. A lot of artists use tracks, but and this was, what was that? Like 2006 or something like that. And the Pro Tools would crash on laptops and things like that. And so it was just a common occurrence. So he just didn't like to mess with that. So he tried to get everything from the record he tried to have actually played on stage. So he asked me, there's a couple bell parts and chime parts and lead string lines. Would you be comfortable playing those on the keyboard? I'm like, I should have done my finger exercises more. Everything comes full circle. So
yeah.
But I was like, yeah, I can do, single line stuff. That's fine. And so he set me up with a keyboard, and I learned how to navigate how to program it and everything like that. And so I started playing those string lines, and I'm listening to the other keyboard player, Eddie Miller, who has been a big keyboard inspiration to me. Just listening to him in the in-ears and just trying to figure out what he's doing, like how he's voicing that and all of that. And he's a great player. So I would be playing the lines in the right hand, and I'd be, okay, well, how do I play this chord in the left hand just to kind of fill it out? So it became like a challenge to myself to get better at keyboards by, kind of filling in the chords here and there. And then, it evolved into more things. Like there was a song that had a clav, like a funky clavinet kind of thing, as well as Rhodes. And so Eddie always played the Rhodes, and they needed the clav part covered. So I was like, all right, well, I sit down and practice that on my little MIDI keyboard at home. And then program the keyboard once I got to the next gig, and I learned about splits. Like I have strings up here on the top few octaves, and then I have clav on the lower here, and then something else, or like 2 octaves of strings. And it started just getting more and more evolving more and more into a complex thing. Whereas now there's on one of his newer songs, I think I have 7 layers on the keyboard. So it went from just a single chime on a like a bell part, and then so now there's 7 layers of things, and I'm trying to move stuff around and just make it all work,
and then stop and go play the trumpet.
Stop and go play the trumpet. Yeah,
come back.
Pick up the trumpet when it's cold after not playing it for 20 minutes and try and play Serpentine Fire.
Yeah.
So that's always fun.
So we should just interject here. Now we're talking about Brian Culbertson. That's how you and I met. I was hired. This must have been about 8 years ago or so to tour manage and mix front of house for Brian.
That's right.
And you were in the band.
That's right.
Actually, you weren't in the band the first year.
Oh, that's right.
You were. You had broken your foot, or no, that was Markwell.
Yeah,
but
I was doing. I had a transcription project that I was doing for an app, and I was head of. So I've always loved doing transcriptions, and it kind of just unlocks musical stuff to me. Like it kind of gets me into what is he doing. So it was like the guitar. So it was like the guitar, the bass, the drums, keyboards, vocals. So everything was transcribed. So I got a glimpse into like, okay, so this guy does the bass line this way, and then he changes it, and this guitar player's doing this. So it was just kind of a very, very interesting thing, but it took up a lot of time and energy, and so I was trying to juggle both that and Brian's gig for a time, and both started suffering a little bit. So I took some time off touring a little bit and focused on the transcription thing for a while. That was during the time when
That was when I had first started with Brian.
Right.
So then the following year, when I came back, we started rehearsal and then into the touring season. Then you were there, and it was great because now we had a real horn section. Trombone, saxophone, and trumpet.
That's right. Yeah,
fantastic.
There was no trumpet in the meantime.
Right.
It was just sax and trombone. And so when you, as an arranger, when you have only 2 voices, there's a lot less you can do with them.
Oh yeah.
Like it's either unisons or close harmonies or octaves. Sometimes fourths or fifths depending on the song, but you really can't do as much as you can with 3 or more. That's what, like writing for big band and stuff like that. You have all the voices you could possibly need. But for 3-horn stuff, that's really kind of the sound. Of Brian's.
The difference was night and day. It was fantastic. I mean, you got a real horn section. You got to have the 3. You got to have at least the 3. And it was fantastic, and that's how you and I got to know each other.
That's right.
We used to drive to the airport together and everything. So
carpool,
it was pretty cool.
Try and beat the traffic and all of that. And
so you've been with Brian for quite a long time.
Yeah, I think I first started working with him maybe 2005 or maybe early 2006, but it's been quite a while. I've done a lot of arranging for him on every subsequent project. I've kind of had more to do on each record. It started out, he obviously he didn't know my arranging, and I'm just some guy. But on one of his records, he let me do the horn arrangement for one of the album cuts, like not one of the singles. so he kind of gave me carte blanche on that one. Just whatever you want to do on it. Let's see what you do. So I did my thing on it, and I was pretty pleased with how it turned out. And then Brian really liked it. So the next project, I did more arranging, and then the project after that, like the second funk record, which was, I think it was 2016.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that one I did all the arrangements for, and by that time, he trusted me, and I knew what he wanted. I knew where he wanted horns, where he didn't want horns, and so it was kind of like it just worked out nicely so that I could do what I wanted and not feel like I was kind of painted into a corner. And that I was really proud of what came out of that record. And so we went in and we played that, we recorded that. It's just a lot of fun doing the horn arranging and horn section playing in general.
Yeah, of course. It just brings up a question for my mind. Is Brian probably could arrange the horns too, right? But
yeah,
he would rather have you do it just to get a different perspective. Or?
Exactly. He he likes to do a lot of the. He's very much a producer in all aspects. So he likes to have a creative hand in everything. But he's done some of his horn arrangements in the past, but he's always left it up to. He had Greg Adams do a bunch, and I think Jerry Hay came in to do Serpentine Fire, and Gary Grant and those guys.
That makes sense because they played on the original Earth, Wind and Fire recording. Yeah,
yeah. So he could do it himself, but he kind of wants to maybe keep that at an arm's length so that he, like you said, he gets a fresh perspective from the horn arranger, because someone else is always going to think of something different than what you are.
Yeah.
So, in our job as horn arrangers, we complement the lead line. Don't step on it. Just make it shine and kind of interject where it's appropriate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now there's obviously there's been other bands and artists that you've played with. You want to talk about some of those?
Yeah, I mean, speaking of Greg Adams, I've been working with his group, East Bay Soul, for a while now. Lee Thornburg is the main trumpet player, and he's gotten me on a lot of stuff. Like, Lee's a really sweet guy. A lot of the guys in town have been very helpful, and when they need a break or they have something else, like he's out with Joe Bonamassa a lot, so. He's gotten me on various things. Like, he knows I'm a horn section guy. Like, he knows that's my favorite thing to do. So, he kind of throws me bones in that regard. So he got me hooked up with Greg. I had already known Greg from one of Brian's sessions when Greg arranged, but so now I actually got to play with him, and that's been a cool thing working with that group, because that's the horn line right up front. It's 5 horns right along the front of the stage. Like, the horns are usually relegated to a back corner, and better heard than
up on
seen.
Some riser in the back. Yeah.
And just kind of out of sight, out of mind until you're interjecting. But this is like, it's just a front line of horns where it's just like, it's in your face. We got the melody a lot of the times. Some of the songs are instrumental. Some of them are vocal. So when they're vocal, we have like a little more of a support role, but a lot of the times it's just cranking horns on the melodies, and just really great horn lines, and a lot of fun to play. Yeah, that's a really fun group. I did some touring in Japan with Rufus, Tony Maiden. I met him through one of Brian's Christmas tours. Tony was one of the guests, and so Tony, we played a lot of some of his and Shaka's songs on that tour, and so that's where I got to know Tony pretty well. And then he called me kind of out of the blue a little later on, and he said, we're doing some shows, Blue Note Tokyo. I had never been to Japan. I had always wanted to go. Yeah. Like, oh yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah,
cool.
I'm
definitely down. So we got together. We did some rehearsal. Actually, Sly Stone joined us on that tour. It's been kind of a rocky road for him personally, but that tour was particularly positive. Slide kind of did more and more every night when he came out, and it was a good experience, and the crowd just ate it up, and all of the Rufus and Shaka Khan tunes are so much fun to play. Again, Jerry Hay did a lot of the arranging, and so it's just, that was a blast. We went a number of times, and then 2013. I went back to Japan with the Percy Faith Orchestra, which is pretty much like the polar opposite of a kind of a horn section thing. It was a lot of softer, more kind of easy listening pad kind of things. It was more orchestral. There were strings, and that was I was playing some of the lead and some of the jazz in that. That was a fun tour. That was, I think, I don't know, 3-4 weeks or something like that. But before that, I had only ever been in Tokyo, like in the city itself. Like, as far as you can see, it's all just buildings and everything. I had never seen like the green parts, and so we got outside of the cities, like 3-hour bus trips outside of the city to see the into the mountains and the fields and everything. It was just beautiful parts all over. Got to I think Nagoya, Osaka, Fukuoka, Sapporo, all kinds of places. It was really good.
That's cool. Yeah, that's really nice. Yeah, I love going to Japan. Before you move on to the next band, I just want to interject about Tony Maiden, because I did a tour with Shaka.
Oh, great!
And it was like a 3-week or a month tour, and Tony Maiden was on it, and that was amazing because. Isn't he the most like unusual guitar player?
Yeah,
he just has the weirdest style.
Well, yeah, he like a lot of guys, like they'll either play with a pick or they'll use like grown out fingernails as a plectrum.
Yeah,
finger style. But what he does is, and this was an interesting issue that came up when we were in Japan. Is we did I think we did 7 nights, and it was like 2 sets a night or something like that. And so what he does is like he kind of flicks like the backs of his fingernails against the strings, and his pinky sticks out as he's playing. He has a very distinctive style, like you said.
Definitely different.
But like he kind of like, as he's strumming, he uses the backs of his fingernails as picks, and so it kind of just like flicks them out onto the strings. And after all the rehearsals that we had, and then all of those sets in a row, he started wearing through his fingernails.
Oh no!
Yeah, with the strings, and so like he had a glass of salt water backstage, like warm salt water backstage, and between sets he'd psych himself up because he knew it was going to hurt, and he'd dunk his fingers into the solution and wince in pain and just get ready for the next set. And
wow. Sounds like he could have used some acrylics put on his fingers.
He was a trooper.
I've seen other guys do that.
Yeah,
other guitar players.
Right.
Put acrylics on certain fingers.
Yeah. But man, he was a trooper. Like he's one of the most energetic stage presence personalities that I've seen. Just such a funky guitarist and great singer, and just like always bopping around the stage, and very, very active, and just always it's never a showy thing. It's all still about the music. It's just like a good feeling. It makes him move and everything.
Yeah, I was really impressed with him because I was like, wow, that's something different. Really a different guitar player.
Yeah.
All right, so I've steered you back, but what else did you?
We've been talking about bands, and so now it kind of goes more towards. I was focusing on being in town more because more in-town work started popping up, and so doing more recording sessions and these types of things, and through those contacts that I had mentioned from the Disney Band and Mancini Institute, I started working, being in sections with a lot of these guys. Like everybody's heroes are everybody's trumpet hero is Wayne Bergeron and Rick Baptist, and Rick is now he's one of the higher ups at the Union. He's not playing anymore, but Wayne Rick got me on a lot of stuff, and friends of mine, colleagues throughout the years, like he's been very helpful in getting us on things, and so that more of that work started cropping up. I started doing some film and television sessions, and those are it was just kind of moving to town. It was something that was always the end game. It was trying to do some of that work, because it's kind of it's very interesting.
It's the most lucrative financially, and you get to stay home.
So exactly,
it is the best of both worlds. There, you get to play, but you can still go home at night and make more money, really, than you do on the road.
Yeah.
Although, for a lot of musicians, actually, they make more money on the road now because there's not enough.
There's not the recording.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, but so it's a ever evolving industry, obviously. But I started doing it was more recording sessions at first, phono sessions. And just working with, like I talked about Pat Williams before, working with Pat. Pat arranged for so many different artists, and then also had his own records. And so that was one of the kind of breakthrough things for me. Was I was invited to do his last record, which was Home Sweet Home, and the section was it was Wayne Bergeron, Dan Fernero, Gary Grant, and me. And it was like, what am I doing here? It's like like three of my heroes, like my absolute heroes, and three guys who have been like the coolest to me.
Yeah. Those guys are cool, though. I remember, back in the heyday of the recording business, I used to do horn sections all the time. We'd do strings and horns in a day. Usually you do the strings in the morning and the horns in the afternoon. And those guys, all these names of all these horn players I know I've met or worked with all those guys. And they were always so cool and really fun. They joke around, but they were so good. They would usually get everything on the first take.
Oh, yeah.
And us in the control room would go, oh, that sounds great. And then they'd come in and go, no, we got to do that over again. We're like, really?
Yeah.
Because they were really particular about it.
Yeah,
really
they know when it's good, but they also know when something can be better. And so, they're very they kind of they can take a step back and like know when they need to redo something or when it's going to be when that's the one. And so a lot of times, like from the booth, like, oh, let's get another one, and like, all right, you're getting into the law of diminishing returns now.
Yeah.
So
now when you're a recording engineer and you're doing a session with those guys, you better get it right the first time. Because chances are it's going to be the first take that you're going to keep.
Yeah. Well, it has the most direction to it. Like, I mean, everybody's concentrating the most on the first take.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not the cleanest, but a lot of times it's the most meaningful, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just being able to be in a section with these guys, and like there was a trumpet player, Warren Looning, who is just fabulous at everything he did, every style. But he was kind of like the go-to soloist guy. And whenever there were changes, they'd pass him the changes, and he'd play a solo, and it was always great. Chuck Finley's the same way; like he would always do all of those. And he's been another guy that's been super cool to me. And so I was Warren died a number of years ago. I actually never got to really get to know him that well, but I knew of him and have the utmost respect for him and his playing. So with this record, I was kind of thrust into the giant shoes of his, and so Pat knew my playing from Mancini Institute and all that. So there were some solos on that, and I played the solos, and the rhythm section have kind of actually been my unofficial agents from then on. Like they Peter Erskine and Tom Rainier and Chuck Berghofer have gotten me a lot of work since then. Like it's just a lot of fun to play with them, and it's just a great experience. And that it all came from that the Pat Williams record, and Pat got sick recently, and he passed away this past July. And just yesterday, we had a celebration of life concert for him. It was really great. Like a lot of Pat's best writing. We got together. He did that Sinatra Land. That's such a great album for any horn player. We love listening to that. And his crowning achievements for himself. He did the duets records. He arranged the duets records with Sinatra. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of his big arrival. I mean, he did a ton of film and television things for many decades, but that was kind of one of his crowning achievements. But Sinatra Land was kind of like a instrumental version of that, just really swinging. And we did a tune from that, and he had written a suite for his daughters and son. Each movement was for one for his daughter, one for his other daughter, one for his son. It was just a really great kind of celebration of his whole career and his whole life, and with a monster band, just all the guys. And so the Barry sax player, Gene Cipriano, is probably the most recorded instrumentalist of all time. He was Vince Mendoza he conducted the whole thing, and so he was talking to the audience. He said, "There's two records that were so formative for me," and it was Pat's Threshold record and Mancini 63. I forget the year. Mancini 60 something, and I think Gene Cipriano was on both of those recordings. So it's just like a glimpse into the past, and then just the present of like all his whole library of arrangements and everything. It's just kind of a culmination of all that.
Cool. So you went through the ranks as starting out a kid in elementary school playing, and you pretty much stuck with the same instrument since the very beginning. Yeah. Went through all the schooling stuff. What about the doctorate degree? Are you going to go for that at some point?
I was thinking about it, but then I started touring and working, and that never materialized. But to the same type of, on the same token, an opportunity presented itself, whereupon there was a trumpet position open at USC. And I had gone there and everything, and Shelley was the head of the program when I was there. He has since moved on to Miami, Frost School of Music in Miami. Bob Mincer is the head of the program at USC now, and I had played with his group a number of times, and he told me that they were looking for a trumpet teacher there, and so he wanted me to throw my hat in the ring and everything, and so I ended up getting that position. Basically, I'm trying to do the same for these students as was done for me, with laying the groundwork, all the fundamentals from my very first lessons, and just get them to a point where the horn is just kind of second nature. It is like an extension of their own bodies, so that when they go to play a solo, they can do whatever they want with the horn. They have the facility to be able to play any range, any volume, any style, so that it kind of frees them up when they're improvising.
Right. So that's what you're doing now.
Yes.
You started there about a year ago.
This is my fourth year.
Oh, fourth year.
Yeah,
okay.
Fourth year.
Realize.
Adjunct faculty. I usually have between 5 and 7 private students, and I've had a small jazz combo every year since I've started there. Those go
that's
for
cool.
A full year. Yeah.
So that's kind of taking you off the road a bit, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's it actually, in the beginning of it, I was still touring, and my days are usually Tuesdays, and from touring, like a lot of times with weekenders and flyouts and stuff, the earliest you're going to leave is Thursday, and the latest you're going to get it back is Sunday night or Monday.
Yeah.
So I figured Tuesday was a safe time to make it. So that's
you can still go out and do those weekend warrior kind of shows.
Exactly.
But touring, going out for 3-4 weeks probably wouldn't work for you anymore.
It just depends, on the circumstance. I mean, obviously, like the faculty at USC is very like heavy working guys. Peter Erskine and Bob Mintzer and Vince Mendoza, Alan Pasqua, like all those guys are just globally known entities, and so they're wanted. Come do this festival in Germany. Come to this festival in wherever. So everybody has times when we're out of the country or out of town, but we always come back and make up the time that we can. And
so they're good about that because they want working musicians to be
you
teaching
don't
the
want
kids.
Somebody who's never working.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, it seems that's a common thread because I've interviewed a few guys that work like at LA Music Academy. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. The school is fine. They want to have those guys, but they also understand that they got to go out and do the road gigs and stuff, and so they're okay with them subbing it out for at least a short period of time.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's cool. That's great. And your new father, so another reason.
Another reason to stay home.
Want to stay home? Yeah.
Yeah, I see from the years of touring, I see a lot of like the dads who aren't there. Like I don't want to miss anything. Mm-hmm. I don't want to miss first steps and first words and kind of big milestones. And so I kind of want to be around more. And so luckily my work situation has evolved more into doing in-town things and theater work and
films
too, right? And TV. Yeah.
Well, films are still, as opposed to pop records, films are still one of those things where you can still be a working musician in the studio.
Yeah.
There's still some of that work here. It's diminished some, but still there is some.
Yeah, there is some, and it's just I'm definitely not high on the list, but it's just I'm just happy to be there whenever I get called. Like you kind of endear yourself to the section principals, and just try and be good to work with and make them sound as good as you can, and support where needed, and just shut up when you're not playing.
And that's another thing with those contractors. They want people that when they call them, they'll answer the phone and they'll be there.
Yeah.
So if you're on tour all the time, you're going to get shoved down further on that list.
Yeah,
right?
say no a certain number of times and
you're gone.
You're gonna yeah. So that was something that being able to say yes and starting to get more into the conscious of the contractors, and
yeah, right.
Because everybody remembers when you're out of town. Nobody remembers when you're back.
Right.
Because
exactly.
guys have had road gigs and they'd be literally back for an entire year. And everyone's like, oh, call this guy. Oh, isn't he out on the road? No, he's here. Like, and guys have had to, post
happens to
updates.
me too.
Yeah. I am in town. I am available for work. That I luckily haven't had to make a big thing out of that. But just being known that you are actually in town and you're around and able and willing to jump in on a last minute call.
Well, it's a great story, a nice success story that you're a working musician, you can make a living, and things are going well for you. So that's great. Good. Glad I got to meet you when we were working with Brian Culbertson.
Absolutely,
yes.
Yeah.
It's fun. So, anything else that you'd like to throw in? Anything like you want to pitch anything to anybody, or?
I can't really think of anything.
Well, if you want to learn how to play the trumpet. Go to USC.
Go to USC, yeah.
And you'll get a great trumpet teacher, right?
All right.
Okay, so, I think that about wraps it up. We went through your entire career.
That's right.
And very, very nice. So I want to thank you for driving out.
For sure.
a little ways from me, so it was
Not too far.
Not too terribly far, but I appreciate you making the trip
Absolutely.
out.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Michael, we'll say goodbye.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
The Rossaround Backstage Podcast wants to thank my good friend, Tim Heinz, for the original music that you are listening to now. We are currently looking for sponsors for the Rossaround Backstage Podcast so that we can continue to bring you interesting stories like the one you just heard. I can be reached through Facebook or email me at rosspallone.com. Thank you for listening.